Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our Cisco CCNA webinar. It's really great to be here today on a Friday, and I want to thank each and every single one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us on a Friday as we have a really great discussion in this webinar about the current Cisco CCNA certification exam, also known as Implementing and Administering Cisco Solutions 200-301 CCNA. So before we get started though, my name is Raymond Lacoste. If you don't know me already, I am the Cisco, ITIL, and AWS instructor here at StormWind Studios. I am also the author of the now retired, that's right, retired, I'm sad about it, but the CCNP T-Shoot Official Certification Guide. But I am the new author of the RC Official Certification Guide, so I'm pretty pumped about that. In today's webinar, folks, though, I want to make sure that we update ourselves when it comes to the CCNA exam objectives. Unfortunately, these updates, though, are not going to be reflected on Cisco's official website. Why? It's completely out of my control. But the great news is that each and every single one of you visiting me here today are going to have the opportunity to create your own custom-made official CCNA exam objectives. Why? Because I'm going to fill in the blanks for you. I'm going to take the unknowns that keep us awake at night, that cause fear and anxiety as we are preparing for a certification exam, because we don't know those things that could be missing from the exam objective. So I am here today to fill in the gaps, fill in the blanks, and make sure that each and every single one of us have the best chance of passing this certification exam on the first try. Now, all this week, I have been teaching CCNA Live. I'm also recording those sessions, so that way there you can watch them as a recorded version 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This new course, or this updated version of the course, contains the official exam objective information as well as Raymond's modified exam objectives to make sure that we are fully prepared. When I went ahead and created the CCNA course late last year, I guess I should say it that way, and we delivered it earlier this year before the exam even existed. It was very thorough. But even then, just creating a course based on the exam objectives, we were missing key elements, and those key elements are now part of the course, and therefore, I'm going to share them with you here as well. So, how do I know the unknown? Well, folks, I took the exam, I passed the certification exam, and there is my score report. So I'm going to share that information here with you today. But before we dive into that information, if you have any questions, folks, comments, or concerns while I am going through these updated exam objectives, please feel free to use the chat area over here. Don't be shy. Chat in. My only request is that you keep it G-rated. That's my only request. Keep it G-rated. But feel free to interact with us using that chat interface. And while I'm presenting the material, Rush, Shane, and Sam, thanks again for being here, each and every single one of you, to assist me and make me look my best as you always do. Thanks again for that. Folks, they're here to help you. They'll be addressing questions while we are live. But after I'm done presenting the material, I'm more than happy to stick around and we can do a Q&A as well. Rush and Shane and Sam will be here as well to assist with that. So we'll do a Q&A at the end. Right, let's dive into what everybody's here for. Let's stop wasting time. And it's about our Cisco CCNA certification. So where are we with this Cisco CCNA certification? We are right here at the associate level. Now, the associate terminology can definitely be misleading. Why do I say that? Because sometimes associate means low level, entry level. You don't really necessarily have a lot of responsibilities. But the associate level for CCNA requires you to have a large amount of knowledge. It requires you to be able to apply that large amount of knowledge. It is a level that, in my opinion, is much higher than a lot of lower level certification exams. And it seems like Cisco has taken it to the next level. They want their associates to be extremely knowledgeable, more so than they did in the past. And this certification exam, I am happy to say that it is a very fair exam. When it comes to associate CCNAs in the world today, this exam is very, very fair. It covers a nice, rounded amount of topics and concepts that you will be responsible for as an associate in the real world. So I'm really happy with this certification exam. Now, it's not an easy exam. Okay? It's not easy if you're not prepared. It's not easy if somebody has not provided you the unknown information that you should have prepared for on the certification exam as well. So for me, providing each and every single one of you with the information you need to be successful is important to me. So I want to make this exam easy for you. It is a difficult exam if you're not prepared. It's an easy exam if you are prepared. It's very fair. It tests a great amount of knowledge that I would hope that each and every single one of you would have at the associate level so you can make yourself more valuable in the real world. So I'm satisfied with the exam. I'm satisfied with the coverage. However, I'm not satisfied with what? I'm not satisfied with the actual exam objectives. I'm not. And I want to share with you my unsatisfaction with those exam objectives today. So that way there, we can all be on the same level playing field when it comes to the certification exam. So let's dive out, go out to our live environment here, to Cisco's webpage. And before I forget, folks, for those of you who do not know, Cisco now allows you to take certification exams in the comfort of your own home. They now have an online exam proctoring solution. So therefore, if you want to take the Cisco certification exams in the comfort of your own home, in your PJs, so that way there, you do not have to go to a testing center. You are welcome to do so. And I've provided that link for each and every single one of you here in the chat area. Please put that in your favorites so that way there, you do not have to delay your certification goals because you're not able to go to a testing center. All right, over to the exam objectives now. When it comes to the exam objectives, make sure you have this link as well available to you. I'll put that in the chat area so you know where to go and get the information about this exam. But more importantly, just scroll down. It's the exam topics that we're going to be focusing on here today. So as I mentioned, these exam topics are wonderful. There is, look, they added, this wasn't here earlier today. Wonderful, updating their site already. So these exam objectives right here, as I mentioned, they're not complete. They're not complete. So we're going to go through these exam objectives here today. But I know many of you are itching right now to know what is on this exam or what the format of the exam is, how many questions there are. So I want to spend a little bit of time covering that with each and every single one of you before we dive a little bit deeper. So Cisco is nice enough to let us know that this is a 2-hour exam. So 2 hours to answer questions. This doesn't include the before time hours or minutes that you have or the after hour minutes you have or time you have in order to do what? Answer their survey or before to sign in and things like that. So that's 2 hours for answering questions. And you are going to have approximately 100 questions on this certification exam. So 100 questions, 2 hours. Wow. You have what? Anywhere from a minute to a minute and a half to answer each question. So yes, be well aware before you go for the certification exam, this is a marathon certification exam. You have to go into this exam knowing the material in your subconscious mind and be able to upload that to your conscious mind as you are answering questions on the exam. You got to be quick. You got to be fast. So 100 questions. Now, what type of questions are there on the certification exam? Well, I want you to be familiar with the old school multiple choice single answer. I want you to be familiar with the old school multiple choice multiple answer and the old school drag plus drop style of questions. And there you go. So what about simlets? What about testlets? What about simulations? Nope. Not at all. Interesting. So Do you need to use hands-on labs? Do you need to practice configurations and verifications? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there may not be simlets, testlets, and simulations, but knowing config, knowing how to verify, knowing how to read the output, that's all still really important when you're answering these questions. So you still want to learn the theory, you want to practice as much as you can with hands-on labs, and then you want to solidify everything you have learned and build your confidence through practice exams. We have you covered for all of those here at StormWind Studios. Now, the unknown. That's what this is right here. The unknown. And this is Cisco's disclaimer. So we have a general guideline of the content that we provided to you below. However, we have the right to throw additional stuff in there that may not be listed and therefore test you on stuff that you would have never prepared for. This is what we're here to talk about today. All this unknown stuff, so that way there we are more confident going into the certification exam. Let's start diving into that. So down here under our network fundamentals. Under the network fundamentals, the first topic that stands out to me that we need to improve upon when it comes to the exam objectives is this one right here. On-premise and cloud. It says here that we need to describe characteristics of network topology architectures, on-premise and cloud. Well, what in the world do we mean by the characteristics in this case of on-prem versus cloud? When I think about on-prem environments, we have our enterprise campus environment, we have our 2-tier, 3-tier model, in our data center, we have our spine leaf, we have WAN connections, that's all there. So the characteristics of on-prem are already covered in these topics. But when it comes to cloud, what is Cisco really trying to get at? They don't give us enough information. Well, when it comes to whether it's on-prem or cloud, characteristics are going to be different. Characteristics in regards to how we deploy, the characteristics when it comes to cost, the characteristics when it comes to control and security and compliance. All of those change when it comes to on-prem versus cloud. The thing about on-prem, though, is that these characteristics are typically going to be stable. They're not going to change all that much for us. So for our data center, we'll have our specific characteristics we need. For our enterprise environment, we'll have our specific characteristics we need. But when we go to the cloud, these characteristics are going to vary greatly when it comes to the types of options that you choose. And knowing the option you're going with when it comes to the cloud is going to be extremely, extremely important, because you need to be well aware of who is managing what. When you identify who is managing what, then you're going to be able to identify the characteristics of deployment in that case, the characteristics when it comes to cost, the characteristics when it comes to control, the characteristics when it comes to security, and the characteristics when it comes to compliance. So when you're with the infrastructure as a service option, provider manages the virtual and physical networking, the virtual and physical storage, the virtual and physical servers, and in the actual virtualization that is making all of this happen, whereas you manage all of this up here. But then platform as a service, that changes. Software as a service, that changes as well. So it's really critical that when it comes to identifying your cloud characteristics for your network topologies, you know the option you're going with, so that way there you can best characterize what it is that you are trying to accomplish. All right, so that is number one, making sure that we are well aware of the infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service, who manages what when it comes to those characteristics. Scrolling down a little bit more through these exam objectives, we are going to reach the exam objective that appears pretty much on every Cisco exam, and that's the IPv4 topic. And the IPv4 topic is always very, very vague in the exam objectives. Configure and verify IPv4 addressing and subnetting. I want to take this a step further, and I want to include in this one here also troubleshooting. So if you're taking notes, make sure you put troubleshooting in here as well. So being able to recognize various issues when it comes to our IP addressing and our subnetting scheme and architecture that we have in place. And why is that extremely important? It's extremely important because if I presented you with a topology as such, would you have the exam skills you need to answer a question like this? All right. Exam skills. Well, how is that different than real world skills? Well, real world skills is pretty simple. I use an online subnet calculator, or I even use Windows calculator in order to figure out what's going on. Plug in some values in decimal, do a little bit of binary conversion, subnet calculator, put in network IDs. It gives me a nice output chart that tells me exactly what should be there and that. So this is, a skill we need to have for the exam, which is completely different than the rest of us, completely different than what we do in the real world. Now, Robert, I believe Robert has been with me in CCNA, so Robert already knows the answer to this. Great to see you here, Robert. In this case here, why can't host A communicate with host B? So what I'm going to show you here is skills that you would learn in my CCNA class, session number 3, specifically session number 3, that's going to help you identify the issue here. So in my particular case, this is what I would do if I was on the certification exam and what I would teach you. I would have my nice white erase board with me with my marker that they give me, or maybe in your case, it'll be a pencil and a piece of paper, all depending on your exam scenario. But it's about being able to quickly figure this out in a minute and a half, 100 questions, 2 hours, even a question like this. You want to be quick. So in my case, I would do things like this in order to figure out what is happening in this scenario, giving me the ability to ultimately identify that my network ID happens to be ending in .64. Therefore, my directed broadcast address is ending in 127. That's 127. And therefore, my usable addresses fall within this particular range. So I'm trying to identify here network IDs, directed broadcast addresses, usable addresses within that range, so I can troubleshoot this particular scenario. So these are subnetting skills that you need, but you don't get a calculator on the exam to do this for you. So in my case, take this 126, compare it falls within this range, and it's a valid address. Take this 65, falls within the range, it is a valid address. So I have confirmed 100% without a doubt this is addressed properly. Therefore, my problem does not exist here. My problem does not exist here at all. All right. So moving on. So on the exam, I would have to move on. What do I want to look at next? Well, another link somewhere else. So let's focus on this link right here. And on this link, /30. Well, what I'll teach you is that with the /30, you're always going to be incrementing by 4 within your network IDs. So that way there, you don't even have to do these chicken scratches on your dry erase board when you're sitting for the certification exam. What are you going to do instead? You're just going to remember that a /30 is always going to be incrementing by 4. So in this case, we have 192.168.11.0, and then our next network ID would be .4. So our addresses in between, this would be valid. 1 would be valid. 2 would be valid. 3 would be the directed broadcast address. And this is our network ID. So right away, we can see we have an addressing problem now. 1 is valid, but 3 is directed broadcast address. And you cannot at all assign a directed broadcast address to an interface. So this is why communication's not working. In the real world, calculators. Exam, chicken scratches as fast as you can. Because if you receive a handful or 2 handfuls of questions where you need to rely on techniques like this, you'll want to be able to do that on a certification exam. So the thing is it might not necessarily appear to you as a subnetting or IP addressing question. It could be presented to you as a routing issue. It can be presented to you as just A can't talk to B, Y. And if it's multiple choice, it could say access control list is a problem, addressing is a problem, routing is a problem, could have other features and services that are listed there as distractors. And without you being able to do your quick calculations of addressing, it's going to be really hard to pass the certification exam. So troubleshooting is a key here, understanding the requirements of addressing and being able to confirm if they are correct or not. So here's an example of a routing table. If I was to ask you which one of these particular entries is going to be used to forward a packet that is destined to 10.0.10.22, well, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made by our router in order to ultimately populate this table and then forward that packet. So the skills that I just quickly identified to you on the last page are actually extremely valuable here as well, because those skills will allow you to quickly identify that this particular entry in the routing table, this particular entry in the routing table, and this particular entry in the routing table all qualify as valid options for forwarding that packet that is destined to this particular IP address. So with that in mind, right, which one would now apply? It would be the one with the longest match, meaning the longest subnet mask would be this one right here. But I have to be able to identify all of the ones that would apply, so that way there, maybe if it was one down here, I didn't accidentally miss it. And also, let's go ahead now and change this value right here. Let's change it to 52 instead. Let's say a packet arrived with a destination 52. Well, this doesn't apply anymore to that packet. It's only these two that apply. And the reason why, using the skills that I quickly demonstrated on the last page, this particular subnet only allows us to forward packets that are destined to 10.0.10.16 to 10.0.10.31. So being able to quickly identify what is the actual valid range of addresses that fall within that network ID would be really important. Real-world troubleshooting, exam troubleshooting, very, very important. So those skills are skills you need, and those are skills that you typically can't read in a textbook. So if you're looking for skills like that to be successful on the CCNA exam, to be successful on the Encore exam, the NRC exam, Network Plus exams, even Windows exams when you're doing IP addressing and subnetting, these skills are going to help you out. Back to the exam objectives. All right. So the next exam objective I want to talk about is wireless. Now, when it comes to wireless is splattered. That's right, splattered throughout the exam objectives. You see a little bit here, you see a little bit down at layer 3 objectives, you see a little bit down under security as well. And I am thoroughly impressed with the wireless cover on this certification exam. And the outline that they have provided us in the exam objectives is pretty accurate, except two topics I want to add that are not spelled out. 2 topics. That's it. That's all that's missing for wireless. So the first topic I want you to add to your own personal exam objective list is wireless client frame types. So when a wireless client is communicating with an access point, there are different frame types that are going to be utilized. We have management frames, we have control frames, we have data frames. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of these frames here in the webinar, but learning about these different frame types are going to be really important for your certification success. In addition to that, I also want you to add to wireless access control lists. So wireless access control lists, like the interface ACL or the CPU ACL, what are those even? What do they even mean? For many of us who've never had the opportunity to work with a wireless LAN controller and work with the wireless ACLs that you can set up on these wireless LAN controllers might not be familiar with this terminology. So being more familiar with the wireless ACL terminology and what they do for us, a requirement for your exam success. So add that to your list. Wireless ACLs as well as the wireless frame types. Our last topic here in section number 1 is the virtual machines. Now, something that I've become accustomed to over the years with all of Cisco exam objectives is that anytime they give you something in brackets, it means you only have to focus on that. Right? So up here, when you look at 1.10, verify IP parameters for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Awesome. Does that mean I have to worry about Android? No. Does that mean I have to worry about iOS on iPhones? No. But down here, they didn't follow their own rules. And so they say here we need to explain virtualization fundamentals like virtual machines. So I, as a class developer and instructor, would talk about virtual machines and the virtualization fundamentals for the actual virtual machine. In reality, folks, this needs to be taken a lot further. It needs to be taken a lot further, and the reason why is because it's not just about the virtual machine. It's about the architecture of virtualization. That's really what we need to know. What goes into the overall architecture to make a virtual machine happen? So a virtual machine, what is that all about? A virtual machine is a virtualized server that sits on top of a physical server. It's inside of it. So in this example, I have 4 virtual machines, and these 4 virtual machines are all on this physical server. I can easily describe to you what a virtual machine is, but that description of a virtual machine and the fundamentals of that virtual machine would not be enough. I need to know the whole architecture here, everything that's going on. So for example, we have our bare metal server. That bare metal server has what? It has a CPU, it has RAM, it has storage, it has these physical components. Now, these physical components need to be virtualized themselves so they can be shared. Shared with who? Shared with each virtual machine. This virtual machine needs a little bit of this one needs a little bit of this one needs a little bit of this one needs a little bit of this, and so on and so forth. So, what do we need to do here? We need to implement something that has the ability to virtualize those physical resources and then control the access that the virtual machines have to those resources as part of the architecture. And that's where our hypervisor comes into play. The hypervisor is going to be responsible for the virtualization of those physical resources and controlling access to those physical resources for each and every single virtual machine. You can think of it as your resource traffic cop, controlling the traffic, controlling the usage of those actual physical resources. And then on that hypervisor, that's where we're putting our virtual machines. And inside those virtual machines, we have our operating systems that we need. We have our applications that we need. And when it comes to the hypervisor, we could have different types of hypervisors. Type 1, Type 2. I'm not going to get into those here right now, but something to be aware of. There's also Type 1 and Type 2 hypervisors that go into that as well. So for CCNA, although the exam objectives tell us that we need to have the ability to explain the fundamentals of virtual machines, it's more than just for the virtual machines. It's about understanding the architecture that goes into those particular virtual machines. We are done section number 1, so let's move on to section number 2 now. In section number 2, this is where I get a little... So where the Hulk in me comes out. Why? Because even before the exam was released and Cisco published these exam objectives, the very first questions that people were asking were related to VLAN trunking protocol and dynamic trunking protocol. So do we need to know VTP? Do we need to know DTP? Those were common questions that were being asked by many, many, many people. Well, let me go ahead and log in to my pod here. And when it comes to VTP, it's about ensuring that we comprehend the purpose of VTP. It's about comprehending the different server modes. It's about comprehending everything that we've always had to know about VTP in the past, but for some reason, it's not even listed as an exam objective. So there are many, many official resources out there that don't even have VTP in them today. So if we type in here, show VLAN brief, to take a look at the VLANs that are on this particular access layer switch, we'll see that it only has the 5 default VLANs currently. So when I create my VLAN, we'll type in VLAN 421 based on my topology. Let's create another one too at the same time, VLAN 422. And taking a look at show VLAN brief again, we'll see that the VLANs were created, but now how do I share those VLANs with the other switches in my topology? So I've configured the VLANs here on ASW1, but is DSW1, DSW2, and ASW2 going to learn about those VLANs? Well, do they even have to? Absolutely. Because if they are going to be forwarding traffic for clients in those VLANs, they have to know about it. So let's access DSW1 right now. When I access DSW1, we'll see in the output here of DSW1 that there are no VLANs listed except for the default VLANs. So by default, folks, our switches are not going to be sharing VLAN information with each other. It is up to you to manually configure the VLANs on each and every single one of your switches. However, at one point in time, Cisco created VTP. And VTP can operate in different modes. If I type in here, show VTP status, and we analyze the output of show VTP status, there are aspects of this output that we need to comprehend to be ready for the new CCNA certification exam, which, remember, are not listed anywhere in the exam objectives. So what are things we want to know? We want to know the different versions that exist when it comes to VTP. Right now I'm running version 1, but what are the other options we have? We need to comprehend the concept of the domain name. And what does it mean when it's blank versus when it's actually filled in? So right now this actually means null, and what are the ramifications of leaving it as null? We need to be well aware of the different modes. So right now we're in transparent mode because it's been configured that way on this switch. But what is the default mode? The default mode is actually server. And server behaves a very certain way. That behavior is important. There is client mode as well. Client mode behaves a very specific way, which is important. And then transparent mode has its own behavior. So understanding the different behaviors here of these different modes will be needed for your success. In addition to that, what in the world's the configuration revision number? And why is it 0 here, even though I have VLANs configured? More on that in my CCNA courses. So VTP, definitely a topic that you want to make sure you don't omit when you are preparing for this certification exam. Now, the other one we said was DTP, Dynamic Trunking Protocol. So we want to add VTP and DTP to our list here. So VTP up here, DTP here, Dynamic Trunking Protocol. So what is DTP all about? DTP allows us to automatically form trunks. That's right, automatically form trunks between two switches. And what are trunks used for? Trunks are used to pass traffic for multiple VLANs between two different switches. So DTP is another requirement of our knowledge for the certification exam. The thing about DTP is that there's different options when it comes to DTP. We have dynamic auto, we have dynamic desirable, we have trunk that can run with DTP and without DTP. And then we simply just have access. Knowing the difference between these and how they interact with each other is critical. So I have put together this chart that we cover in our live sessions and our recorded sessions, but this chart here is going to help you identify what is the result of any type of misconfiguration when using DTP. So for example, in this case, we have trunk, no negotiate on both sides. That's a success. But what we need to realize here is that this shuts off DTP. So there's no DTP running here anyways when we go with this particular option. But then as we're analyzing this chart, we'll see here that if one of our switches is dynamic auto and the other one's dynamic auto, there's no trunk formed. So DTP, being able to configure it, being able to verify it, being able to troubleshoot it, should be exam objective 2.2D as an example, but it's not. What about dynamic desirable and dynamic auto? Well, there's a trunk that's going to be formed for you. What about trunk and dynamic auto? Well, as long as you don't shut off DTP, that will work for you as well. But then if you have this option wrong on this side versus auto over here, or you have access, you are not going to have the connectivity that you are expecting. So definitely taking the time to remind yourself or learn these various combinations will be important. Oh, another one right here, folks. In brackets, only focus on LACP. Up here it says you only need to know the normal range VLANs. Absolutely, that is correct. Data and voice. Absolutely, that is correct. Make sure you focus on CDP and LLDP. Absolutely, that's correct. Only focus on LACP when it comes to layer 2 and layer 3 EtherChannel. That is not correct at all. It should say LACP. It should also include their PAGP, so Port Aggregation Protocol, as well as the option of ON, just like we've always had before. So that hasn't changed from older editions of CCNA. So PAGP, LACP, none, knowing what PAGP's proprietary, LACP's industry standard, none is not using a protocol for EtherChannel. And then the configuration and the options and the ramifications of choosing the wrong options are critical for your exam success as well. What's our next one we want to examine here? Spanning tree protocol. Now, spanning tree protocol, it's pretty much exactly where we want it to be, except for I want to add two more topics. Two more topics, so that way there we have no surprises. We want to take the time to make sure that we have a solid understanding of what BPDU guard is. So BPDU guard. Make that 2.5 point D on your edition of the exam objectives. Next, what do we have? Root guard. That's the next one as well. So BPDU guard and root guard, very, very important to make sure you are not blindsided at any point in time on the new CCNA certification exam. So write those down. And that is it for this section. So what did we add? We added PAGP on DTP, VTP, BPDU guard, root guard to the exam objectives to make sure we know the unknown. Let's continue our adventure here into section number 3, folks. So when it comes to section number 3, the first thing that stands out to me is administrative distance. Administrative distance. And then also floating static routes utilize administrative distance as well. Administrative distance is coming up a lot in the exam objectives. And the thing about administrative distance is that administrative distance is a ranking system for sources of information. And this ranking system is going to include different protocols or sources that are not exam objectives. So, for example, if EIGRP is not an exam objective, does it still require you to have knowledge of the administrative distance? Absolutely. What about ISIS? Even though it's really never utilized in our enterprise environments for most of us, more so used in ISPs, but there are some shifts happening there with ISIS. We are seeing more of it in larger enterprise environments now. But CCNA level, it's never, ever really been a topic. But again, that administrative distance is still an exam objective. So this chart is a chart that you will want to memorize, knowing that connected is 0, static is 1, eBGP is 20, EIGRP is 90, OSPF is 110, ISIS 115, and so on and so forth, is important for your success. Now, I do want to do a little bit of a journey with each and every single one of you right now, so you have just a simple, better understanding of administrative distance. I want you to leave here with something that is going to help you remember going forward what administrative distance is. And that is a journey, a trip together. We're going to take a trip right now from Phoenix, Arizona to Las Vegas. Well, no, not we. I am going to go from Phoenix, Arizona to Las Vegas right now with my family. That's right. My wife and my 2 children. We're going to Las Vegas. Now, don't ask me why I'm taking my children to Las Vegas. And please don't judge me about taking my children to Las Vegas. But here we go. With administrative distance, I'm sitting right now here in Phoenix. I have to choose various sources to help me get to Las Vegas. So for example, what could I use to guide me? We could use a paper map that my kids are holding in the back of the SUV. So paper map the kids are holding. What else could I utilize to guide me from Phoenix to Las Vegas? I could use the GPS that's part of the vehicle. I could have my wife give me directions on this journey. And then I could use Google Maps as an example. So we could go with Google Maps. So when it comes to administrative distance here, folks, I am ranking what is better than the others. And with administrative distance, lower is better. So I'm going to start my ranking right now. Hopefully my wife is not watching or listening in. I don't know. All right, I'm going to take my chances here today. And I'm going to go ahead and pick number 1 is Google Maps. Number 2 is going to be my GPS. Number 3 is going to be my wife. And number 4 is going to be the kids in the back seat with the paper map. Whew. All right, so there we go. I've created my own administrative distance. And that's what Cisco has done here. Cisco has created their own administrative distance, their own ranking system that is utilized to do what? To ensure that a single source is going to be used to make the decision. A single source is going to be used for the decision. So for example, if I learn about the 10.0.1.0/24 network from EIGRP and OSPF, my router says, well, EIGRP has a better administrative distance. Therefore, I'm going to use EIGRP right now, and I'm going to ignore OSPF. So that's what I'm doing here. I am saying that if Google Maps tells me to go this way, and my wife tells me to go this way, I ignore my wife. And that's what the router's doing. The router, simply based on the administrative distance, is deciding from the get-go who is going to be most trustworthy on this journey and who is going to be ignored. Now, the great thing about this is if Google Maps fails for some reason because I'm in an area where all of a sudden I can't get connectivity, then the GPS kicks in and I still ignore my wife. However, if the GPS fails, then my wife becomes the authoritative source and I will listen to my wife and for the rest of the journey that we are going on at this point in time. So that is administrative distance in a nutshell, and a great way to remember it, folks, for the certification exam as you're sitting there trying to identify administrative distance and really examining what is going to be chosen by your router. Always think back to my family adventure here where I'm just going to ignore my wife. All right. All right, I'll just change topics now and make sure my wife's not watching or listening or anything like that behind the scenes. All right, I'll find out after this webinar if that was a good example I should have used or not. So continuing down here through our exam objectives, what do we have? We have next on my list OSPF. So here's the deal, folks, about OSPF. With OSPF, they're pretty great in their coverage. It's single area OSPF, so you're only going to be learning about area 0, simple OSPF configurations, nothing really too exciting that, in my opinion, is applicable in the real world. Because in the real world, we still want to have a multi-area design as opposed to a single area design, but we have to start somewhere. So we start here with single area in CCNA, and then we're going to move on to multi-area in Encore. But what's missing here is a little bit more detail in regards to OSPF packet types as well as OSPF states. So although with a neighbor adjacency, the hello packet is utilized, we need to know more than just the hello packet. And when you analyze exam objectives as such and you see neighbor adjacencies, the first thing that comes to most people's mind is just simply the hello packet. That's it, that's all. So what happens is we kind of underprepare in this particular case because we're not aware of the other OSPF packet types that are in existence, like the DBD and the LSR and the LSU and the LSAC. That used to be kind of reserved for the CCNP level. But now, not listening to the exam objectives, is something we need to be aware of here at the CCNA level. So neighbor adjacencies 3.4a exam objective might be implying you need to know the packet types, but it would be nice if it was spelled out so we could dive a little deeper into packet types, but then where those packet types are utilized during the neighbor formation. So the packet types here, as we can see, down attempt and it two-way, the hello packets used there, but then as we move on from there with xstart, no packet type there, but then exchange, loading, full, we have packet types happening there. Also, what is happening in some of these different states, like two-way state? What does that mean? It means bidirectional communication. It means at this point, if we need to elect a designated router and a backup designated router, we will at the two-way state. But if we don't, like with a serial PPP link, then we wouldn't have to elect a DR or beater at that point in time. So that's all happening there at the two-way state. But then after that, the xstart state, electing who is going to be the router that is responsible for initiating the communication going forward and synchronizing our databases through the exchange loading stages so we can become fully synchronized at the very bottom. So adding packet types, folks, as well as states to your preparation of this exam would be extremely valuable, extremely valuable. Now we're going to move on to, the one that just totally. All right, why am I? The reason why is because it says here, describe first hop redundancy protocols. So describing first hop redundancy protocols, for folks, is not descriptive enough. Here's what I would prefer to see here, so that way there you are not missing valuable information. It should be more like identify the characteristics or identify the purposing characteristics of first hop redundancy protocols, including HSRP and VRRP. And in order to really understand the characteristics of these first hop redundancy protocols like HSRP and VRRP, it means that you will have to examine them in deeper detail and even see potentially a configuration of them, so you have a better understanding of things like the virtual router IP address, the virtual router MAC address, the active versus standby states, the master versus backup states. Well, that's more than just describing the purpose of a first hop redundancy protocol. That is about understanding how a first hop redundancy protocol functions and works. So that way there, our end users can use that virtual router, which has a virtual IP address and a virtual MAC address as its default gateway, instead of just relying on the address of the physical router, and therefore the physical router being a single point of failure. So the first hop redundancy protocol allows us to have redundant default gateways, eliminating our single point of failure. Well, there's the description, but the characteristics we need to know to get ready for the certification exam as well. So definitely we need to know more than just describing our first hop redundancy protocols. Now, back over here to layer number 3. Something to keep in mind, something that totally shocked me, not even an exam objective, is EIGRP. EIGRP. That's right. You need to know a little bit about EIGRP. For example, EIGRP is different than OSPF. It is a distance vector routing protocol, where OSPF is a link state routing protocol. So with EIGRP, it's about its basic functions, what it is, what it can do for you, and some of the differences between EIGRP and OSPF. For example, EIGRP can do unequal metric load balancing as well as equal metric load balancing, where the OSPF can only do equal metric load balancing. With OSPF, metric is defined as cost, but with EIGRP, we're dealing with something known as the feasible distance. That's right, and the feasible distance is going to be determined based on values that come from a neighboring device that advertises to us an advertised distance. Okay, and then EIGRP has a very special name for the best path. It's called a successor, and the backup path, that's right, a backup path pre-calculated is called a feasible successor. I see that nowhere in the exam objectives. So from an exam objective standpoint with EIGRP, definitely add things like successor, feasible distance, advertised distance, and be aware of some of the differences between EIGRP and OSPF to be fully prepared for the certification exam. Oh, and don't forget about administrative distance. We definitely don't want to forget about that. Almost done, folks. We're getting near the end. So in our IP services section here, folks, they did a really good job when it comes to configuring and verifying. For NTP, I would like you to dive a little bit deeper than just configuring and verifying NTP operating client and server mode. Also consider things like broadcast as well. And let's not forget about authentication. You would think that authentication would show up under security fundamentals, but it doesn't in regards to NTP. So I would also consider looking into topics related to authentication for NTP. DHCP DNS, perfect. Explain the function as SNMP. I would add configure to this. Absolutely. I would also throw in configure for SNMP. That would be a good addition. Syslog. Now, this is why I'm going through this. Syslog. Most of the time we prepare for syslog questions on a certification exam by doing what? We are going to go ahead and memorize a chart. That's what we've done all these years, folks. 20 years of syslog messages and exams. And what do? You just memorize this chart and you pretty much move on. The exam objective says we have to describe the use of syslog features, including facilities and levels. Well, what does that even mean? Well, I'm going to give you a general idea of what that means. It means that the facilities, such as the system, the OSPF, ACLs, dynamic ARP inspection, DHCP, SSH, those are services, features, and protocols. Those are the facilities, and there's more, that generate these syslog messages. And they're also going to include what into that? They're going to include a level that goes along with that. So yeah, we still need to know our levels, But if I showed you this chart, folks, how many of you would be able to be confident in knowing that a system restart gives you a level 5, and then OSPF adjacencies are 5, and access control lists for security are 6. Dynamic ARP inspection gives you 4. DHCP is going to throw at you when address assigning a level 6, and SSH, and so on and so forth. Right. Here's what I want you to take away from this discussion. When you are doing hands-on labs, folks, that we provide to you, pay attention to syslog messages. Spend a little bit more time looking at the messages, reading the messages, recognizing what is showing up. This particular service feature protocol generated this particular message. Oh, question coming in. SNMP, that's right. Let me go back to that in a moment. So spend a little bit more time on syslog, folks. Absolutely. Make sure you read syslog messages. So back over here now at the exam objectives, we want to focus both for SNMP. Let's make sure we're doing both V2 and V3. Both V2 and V3. You never know when you are going to be tested on one or the other. So be prepared for both of those. When it comes to quality of service, folks, quality of service right here, really great job here. Classification, marking, queuing, congestion, policing, shaping. Absolutely be able to explain what they do. But I want to add one more here for each and every single one of you, and that is going to be the pen doesn't want to write right now. All right. I'm going to add one more into here. And weighted random early detection, WRED. WRED, weighted random early detection. So keep that one in mind. Security, they did a really good job laying it out here, but I would want to enhance this one right here, folks. This particular topic of configuring device access control using local passwords. Local passwords leads us to believe what? It leads us to believe line passwords as well as local username and password database where we type in usernames and passwords. But let's not forget that we can use the local username and password with what? With AAA. So also having the ability to configure, verify, troubleshoot passwords with AAA for local authentication, I would add to that as well. And that is not mentioned anywhere here. Oh, wait, AAA is right here. But it says differentiate between what is authentication, what is authorization, what is accounting. So just be able to describe the three different ones and compare the three together. But up here, this leads you to believe you don't have to know how to configure, verify AAA. I would make sure I can do a AAA configuration or read a AAA configuration when it comes to local password utilization. All right, and our last one, folks, down here in automation and programmability. For those of you who are stressed about this, do not stress about this. This is very inclusive. The automation and programmability exam objectives, what it says here is what you need to know. I was very, very happy with my exam experience when it came to this section, except there's always an exception. This one right down here, right at the bottom. What does it say? Recognize the capabilities of configuration management mechanisms, Puppet, Chef, and Ansible. Recognize the capabilities. Okay, what are these capable of doing? When I taught this the first time, back in January, before the exam existed, we didn't know what was on the exam. So what are the capabilities of these configuration management tools? I lay them out for you down here. We talk about them. All of them have a common goal of doing what? Managing large-scale infrastructures efficiently with minimal input from developers and systems admin. They're going to give us the ability to automate, therefore improving our speed, making us more agile, ensuring reliability, making us compliant. I was pumped. And then I took the exam. And what I found was this chart that I made for Encore, I should have had in CCNA. Because the Encore exam objective states that we need to be able to compare and contrast these different configuration management tools. So I made this chart for Encore, not knowing that it would be so valuable for CCNA as well, even though this is not what the exam objective states. So this chart here will help you identify whether it's agent-based or agentless, what scripting language is used, and then the actual language is used, the terminology that goes along with it, ports and protocols, and so on and so forth. So yeah, take a screen cap, folks. Here, let me pose for you. That was your only chance. All right. Folks, that is it. We have provided ourselves with a lot more knowledge and information pertaining to the exam objectives, which I'm extremely happy I had this opportunity to share with you. And I hope you got a lot of time, a lot out of your time here with me, taking notes, creating your own personal exam objectives from this experience. One thing I would like to add is what you saw here today is a really great representation of what we do here at StormWind Studios for our training. We do live delivery. We use that live delivery to record those sessions. We provide you with hands-on labs for those courses that require it for you to gain the knowledge you need. And we even provide practice exams. Those are the, I like to call, trifecta of exam success. Keys to exam success, folks. Number one, learn the theory. Read, listen, work with an instructor, a mentor, somebody who can help you learn that information. Then you take your hands-on labs and you start applying that information. Why? So that way there you're seeing that theory now in action on lab equipment. And then when you've got the knowledge down, you've taken the hands-on labs to essentially download that knowledge into your subconscious mind so you never forget it, because by doing, you retain. Then you go on to the practice exams to build the confidence you need to tackle exam-style questions. But what the practice exam lets you do is see how well you're capable of taking that information in your subconscious mind and bringing it back when you need it in order to answer questions. So we're giving you that trifecta for exam success, folks, here at StormWind Studios. And you saw the demo I was doing earlier with VLAN trunking protocol. That was our actual CCNA lab environment. Real gear, real operating systems, nothing simulated, folks. Nothing's emulated. It is the real deal, real hardware labs for the CCNA classes that you will get as part of our CCNA. Now, if you're more focused on the professional level, not CCNA, don't worry about that. We already have coverage for CCNP Enterprise, CCNP Security, CCNP Collaboration, and then later on down the road, later this year, that is, Data Center Service Provider will be available as well. But you know what? Maybe Cisco's not your cup of tea, and that's perfectly fine. We do other training as well. Microsoft, VMware, cybersecurity, ITIL, project management, just to name a few. So if you're really itching right now, itching to get training, we'd love to hear from you. So please contact Mike, folks. Contact information right here. Email, phone number. Mike would love to hear from you. So reach out to Mike. And I hope, folks, you had a lot of fun with me here today. Our classes, we have a lot of fun as well. Training has to be fun. If training's not fun, you are not going to remember what you learn. So we make our classes fun and exciting so that way there you will benefit the most. And why do we want you to benefit the most? Well, when you get the right training and you gain the confidence you need from that training, you make yourself more valuable. You make yourself more valuable to your company. You make yourself more valuable to the real world. And when you're more valuable, there's more opportunities for you. So let us help you achieve the heights you want to achieve down the road, folks. All right. Mike's waiting for you, folks. We will stick around, though. I'll stick around here right now. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to chat them in. I'm going to take a look here behind the scenes to see if there's anything that my team behind the scenes, Shane, thank you so much. Dan, thank you so much. Russ, thank you so much. Sam, thank you so much. Zach as well. Any questions that you guys want to forward to me, go right ahead. In the chat area, I'm not going to scroll back through it because there's tons of chats that happen. So a lot of fantastic participation today, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just want to thank everybody again for all the thank yous that you're providing in the chat area. Much appreciated. I don't see any questions coming in right now. All right, I do see one about posting this particular information in our CCNA resources section. I won't necessarily put this right in my CCNA resources section, but based on your request, I don't have a problem creating a quick, shorter video that will definitely spell out those extra things that people should be focusing on. Absolutely. I will do that, and I will add it to the resources section of our environment. We got a question about supplemental material. We provide you with what you need to be successful, meaning there is no supplemental material that you would need to be successful on the exam. So our live classes become recorded classes, which you get to review many times. You have access to our class slides as well. So the information, the bullet points, all of that is available to you. Couple that with the labs, couple that with the practice exams. You have so much information at your fingertips that a lot of it is based on our own experience with the certification exam. So therefore, the labs have things in it to help you for the exam. The practice exams help you. Are they the exact answers, questions? Of course not. Can't do that. But the information is there. There's so much information available to you that you don't need to go out and get anything else to supplement what we provide to you. Do you need to know anything in regards to Meraki? For CCNA, no, not at all. So when it comes to the wireless coverage, it's more centered around the 5500 wireless LAN controller. Yeah. Brian's asking, in regards to CCNA, what course should we start with in StormWinds, and are the new material incorporated already? So, Brian, right now we are teaching CCNA live, so if you wanted to start with CCNA right now, the new material has already been incorporated as of this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So our first 4 sessions are now recorded. They're already up in the campus environment, so if you wanted to catch up, you could this weekend. And then join us next week for our live sessions where we do session 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then once we're done next Thursday, session number 8, we will have CCNA baked with all of the new information, the exam objectives, plus Raymond's updated exam objective information. So CCNA is always a great place to start. And it's called CCNA. Or implementing, I'll have to look up the full name of it. So question coming in, do I recommend a help desk tech go for this if they have Net Plus or Security Plus, or go for CCNP, something else? Here is the question that you must ask yourself if you're a help desk tech. Do I truly know the fundamentals of networking? Do I know those nitty-gritty details? And here's the reason why. If you go to CCNP without the nitty-gritty details, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. Even though CCNP is not a prerequisite for, or CCNA is not a prerequisite for CCNP, you still need that foundational knowledge to pass the CCNP exams. Without that foundational knowledge, you will not be able to successfully squeak your way through those exams at all. So, do I recommend that somebody go for Net Plus, Security Plus, CCNA, CCNP, something else? Well, if you're a help desk tech, what are the types of things you are going to be responsible for? Networking, CCNA is good for that. Network Plus is good for that. Security potentially as well. So absolutely get Security Plus as well. Start off with Network Plus, jump into Security Plus. Or start off with Network Plus, go to CCNA, go to Security Plus. Right? Those three right there, those three are extremely valuable certifications to have if you are a help desk tech. If you go up to CCNP, then you are going to be missing out on the fundamentals, and you're going to be missing out on what value that Security Plus gives you as a help desk tech. So I would definitely Net Plus, CCNA, and Security Plus would be three really great combinations to have on your resume as a help desk tech. On OSPF v2, we have a question. Point to point, is Cisco looking for OSPF area use design? So it says point to point in the exam objective. So let's go out to that. So what do they mean by point to point? So in this particular case, point to point versus broadcast, it's really more about network types. So there are 5 different OSPF network types, and point to point and broadcast are 2 of them. And so since we are in single area OSPF, we're not really worried about WAN or DMVPNs here or old school frame relay links. Then for most of us, we are just going to be dealing with point-to-point and broadcast network types. So when it comes to point-to-point information, it's about where we're going to use point-to-point. So for example, on a serial PPP link or a serial HDLC link, if we have them, more than likely we won't in today's day and age. So when can point-to-point be beneficial? Point-to-point can be beneficial when we want to connect 2 routers together back-to-back with a single link. So let's say, here's my single link. Let's connect our 2 routers. Yes, I'm bending it too much. Connect our 2 routers back-to-back in this particular case. And then we could change that network type to point-to-point, even though we're using Ethernet. So in this case, Ethernet, OSPF defaults to broadcast, but however, when it defaults to broadcast, it is going to have to create additional LSAs called network LSAs. And when we switch to point, we can improve the efficiency of our network by changing it to point on those links. But we have to be very aware of the scenario and situation, because you can't change it to point if there's more than 2 routers that are connected together on that link. So that's what they're referring to when it comes to point versus broadcast in that case. And then with broadcast, we also have our DR and BDR election process that goes along with that. All right, folks, thanks again for being here with me today. I really appreciate that. We are going to go ahead now and seal up this webinar. Thanks for hanging out with me during the question time. But if you have any more questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to continue on. I will leave this particular page up right now. Also, I will be around to answer some chats behind the scenes in the chat area as well for a few moments. So I'll be off screen, but you'll still have the ability to communicate with me with the chat area. So thanks again, folks, for hanging out with me on Friday in this CCNA webinar. Happy learning, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you in a session with us here at StormWind Studios at sometimes in the future. Take care, everybody, and bye for now.